This guy is, I don't want to use this word lightly, but this guy will genuinely endanger the United States if he becomes president again, and he's anywhere close to as unrestrained as I think he's gonna be comparative to last time, the people who were around him. That's just a terrible idea. Could you imagine if the president comes forward, he says he's not going to defend Europe? This is how you get rid of deterrence. This is how you erase all deterrence and start wars. This is how you get the North Koreans saying, wow, we can invade South Korea because they don't care. When Dean Acheson did that speech in Asia, talking about America's policy in Asia, saying, oh, we're going to defend this, defend that, and he left South Korea out of it. That is sometimes talked about as a reason as to why the North Koreans invaded. Now that's disputed. But we don't always know how like our foreign policy signals that we try to send around the world, what message is received. Because, for example, let's say we try to do something to deter further aggression, like people talk about like a nuclear scenario, like using a smaller tactical nuclear warhead on the escalation ladder in order to try to divert a Soviet invasion or to try to scare off further escalation. But if you launch a nuclear weapon and the Soviets misread that and they think it's the start of a major nuclear attack, then they might fire their entire nuclear arsenal depending upon how that signal was read. That's a scenario that's talked about a lot during the Cold War. And when it comes to this, though, like the fog of war, confuses sending signals. This signal is clear. I don't care about Europe. I don't care about our defense commitments to Europe. I don't care about European security. If there was to be a security crisis in Europe, not my priority. That's how I don't see how the Russians could read it in any other way. I don't see how the Russians could read it in any other strain whatsoever. Let's read it. One of Europe's most senior politicians recounted how former U.S. President Donald Trump privately warned that America would not come to the EU's aid if it was attacked militarily. You need to understand that if Europe is under attack, we will never come to help you and to support you. Let me say that again. Never. He said never. Because I've seen some people try to defend this, saying, well, in this, he was trying to critique the Germans for not paying enough into the defense budget. Wasn't he right about that? Yes, he was right about that. But the signal he said was, hey, you guys need to increase your defense spending because we can't hold the load all of ourselves. It was, we will never defend you. Our commitments to you are worthless. I, as president, am unilaterally telling you what the future of the United States is going to be when it comes to you in this relationship. Without Congress's say, without anybody else's say, I'm telling you, we're not going to come to defend you. That post-World War II peace that was developed, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, all of these countries we've worked for 60, 70, 80 years developing ties with the Marshall Plan till Europe is our main export market, helping rebuild Europe into the second largest reserve current holders of the second largest reserve currency in the world, a strong economic bloc that we heavily trade with, and has helped us when we're dealing with security issues, and we've helped them when they're dealing with security issues. People forget this, but the Ukrainians joined us frolicking around in Iraq during the Iraq invasion. They joined us when we were, multiple European powers joined us after we were attacked after 9/11. But now, because the Germans didn't spend enough, we're saying we will never come to your aid? Bizarre, man. Bizarre. You need to understand that this is just abandoning like 80 to 90 years of history in rebuilding after like the post-World War II peace. And oh God, why? What would be the purpose of this? What benefit to the United States? You need to understand if Europe is under attack, we will never come to help you and to support you. Trump told European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen in 2020, according to French European Commissioner Thierry Breton. The whole reason why this is so terrifying is the point is to avoid a war. The point is that deterrence is supposed to stop people from wanting to start wars in Europe because they know that they can't change the territorial borders because that is the standard that we have set. And because they know that we could come to intervene or that we would come to intervene. And we would intervene on behalf of NATO. And that has stopped aggression because nobody wants to get in a war with all of NATO and the United States. It is. I understand that some people are terrified by the idea of their children dying off in a European war. And I am saying that, of course, if we have security commitments, that there's always a possibility that might happen. But by acting in collective defense, you make the odds of one of these wars so much less likely because people know the stakes. You need to understand if Europe is under attack, we will never come to help you and to support you, Trump told European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen in 2020, according to French European Commissioner Thierry Breton, who was also present at the meeting at the World Economic Forum in Davos. Can I also say, Biden recently at that speech, the January 6th speech he did, he was talking about how leaders come up to him and ask him, please, please tell me he's not going to get elected again. Please tell me he's not coming back into power. Don't let him. Don't let him. And, you know, I thought he was exaggerating for effect. But if this is the type of conversations he was having with world leaders, on top of what he was saying in public, that's not that surprising to me whatsoever. By the way, NATO is dead. And we will leave. We will quit NATO, Trump also said, according to Breton. And he added, and by the way, you owe me $400 billion because you didn't pay, you Germans, what you had to pay for defense, Breton said about the tense meeting where the EU's then trade chief, Phil Hogan, was also present. Okay, so NATO is dead. We will leave. We will quit NATO. NATO's not dead. NATO, Article 5 still works. Article 5 is still dissuading invasion of nation states like Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania. When we triggered Article 5 after 9/11, they sent soldiers with us into Afghanistan. Many of their young men also died in the mountains of Kandahar province. And you owe me $400 billion. I assume this number is how much America has spent on like bases in the region or something. I have no clue. Because you didn't pay, you Germans. You had to pay for defense. So he's saying that they're going to leave NATO, and on top of leaving NATO, while they're leaving, the Germans are going to have to pay them $400 billion. What a I gotta say, I never saw that money come in. I have a weird feeling this master negotiation strategy didn't end up working. This is also probably why I want to throw out there that Congress passed a few months ago legislation to make it so that the president cannot unilaterally withdraw from NATO. It probably spread around that Trump was flirting with that idea, and Congress didn't like the idea of him unilaterally pulling us out of one of the most successful defense organizations in the 21st and 20th centuries. And so, yeah, I think they probably got in the way of that. Breton told the anecdote at an event in the European Parliament in Brussels on Tuesday, just days before the Republican Party holds its January 15th caucus in Iowa. The opening contest is Trump's bid to win the Republican nomination for a run at returning to the White House. Party members will cast their votes for candidates, including Trump. We already know all this. Brussels is rife with fear about the possibility with Trump's return to the U.S. presidency. As the commissioner in charge of the EU's industrial policy and defense agenda, Breton has pushed for the EU to boost its own defense capabilities amid Russia's war in Ukraine, and on Tuesday floated a $100 billion fund to ramp up arms production in the bloc. That would be fantastic, actually. That was a big wake-up call, and he may come back, Breton said about Trump. So now, more than ever, we know that we are on our own, of course. We are members of NATO, almost all of us. Of course, we have allies, but we have no other option but to increase drastically this pillar in order to be ready for whatever happens. He's basically saying he might come back, then we'd be on our own. We don't know about the future reliability of our American allies, and because of that, we need to prepare for the worst case scenario, a Trump presidency where he abandons his allies and backstabs like a fucking snake. And we need to increase defense production much more than they're currently investing to do so. And I do think they should increase defense production much more than they're currently investing to do so. Try to expedite the process as much as possible, considering, you know, there's an ongoing war and that ammunition is needed. But man. I don't like America being seen as such an unreliable ally. I don't like Congress having to go out of their way to make sure the president can't unilaterally do this, even though I do like Congress holding the executive branch accountable when it comes to foreign policy. This right here seems crazy. It seems wild. But remember, This was during the term where Trump had the more quote unquote moderate Republicans like Bill Barr and others around him to quote unquote hold him back. I don't buy it, right? I think, by the way, Bill Barr holding him back is laughable. But those people were there to hold him back. He gets in there again, it's only going to be loyalists. That argument people had in 2015 of like, oh, well, Trump won't be that bad because he'll be surrounded by experts. That'll not be the case this time. So the idea that he might try to do it or challenge the constitutionality of Congress's hold on him to not be able to pull out of NATO, I don't necessarily believe he wouldn't do that. I also don't necessarily believe he won't pursue it anyway or try to pressure Congress people to help him pull out of NATO. Or even if they stay in NATO, if he doesn't want to go help Europe, that could still, if there's a crisis, he could maybe not go help our allies. We could stay in NATO and do nothing, which would be a disaster, or degrade deterrence and encourage the Russians to do more. Because if the Russians think this is Trump's policy, then how could anyone possibly think that Trump would have stopped the Russian invasion of Ukraine while Biden wouldn't have? If this is Trump's policy. And that's the last thing I want to say about this. To me, this is the final nail in the coffin to the idea that Trump could have stopped the Russian invasion of Ukraine while Biden wouldn't. If Trump's position is, we will never come to Europe's defense, why would the Russians think America would have any dedication to helping the Ukrainians if Trump's open position is, we will never help Europe if it's attacked? So I think this puts the final nail in the coffin of that argument, at least in my mind. Also, he's not the only one proposing this. It was a few weeks ago that another Republican GOP nominee, one that's not going to be the candidate for president, he's polling at like 4, 5, maybe 6% maximum. So he's not going to succeed. But Trump is also not even the only Republican nominee proposing a withdrawal from NATO. Even if Trump isn't doing it openly, Ramaswamy, the guy who said that American aid to Ukraine was being sent back to the cartels, lied about it, was called out, didn't know the differences between the firearm while wanting to institute a gun policy in this country and control gun regulations in this country. Somebody who knows very little about foreign policy has just come out of the tech world to just jump into American politics. And within a year, he has come to the conclusion that the most successful defense pact that we've ever been involved in, we should just leave. This would certainly increase our negotiations for that deal that Vivek wants to make with Russia over Ukraine. God, Republican Party is deeper in an isolationist slant than ever.